So before I start my talk, I want to say one thing. I've never met Nell, so none of my presentation was collaborated in any way. So I just want to make sure, because she left it off exactly where I want to start. So I think, this is unbelievable collaboration. So with that being said, my talk focuses a little bit more on getting to how we can get there, and few people had questions around that. So I'm kind of trying to get a little bit close of what we are doing internally at Shippable in order to get there. And a lot of these things are coming from our experience for the last 4 years by building a startup from scratch. And so that's what this is. So before I introduce myself, I actually thought it would better to introduce these words, which people use it significantly. I mean, I know it's a bit of an eye chart. I can just give you guys 30 seconds to read it. I'll just quickly kind of run past it. So with that, I'm just going to quickly go through it. So continuous integration is very simple. Get all your developers, integrate their code into the repository on a regular basis, and run a build verification test immediately after that happens for every single commit. If you do that, you catch errors early, and maybe you can fix them, because the cheapest cost to fix those errors at development than anything else down the lane. So pipelines. So what ended up happening is people said, okay, I'm going to do unit testing, but then they wanted to upload that particular result, some binary, some tar file, some Docker image into a registry. So I needed a sequence of events that need to happen. If my prior step finishes, I want to start the next step, or if my prior step fails, I want to do something else. That is known as a pipeline. The third thing I want to talk about is application release automation. So then immediately got into okay, I got these bits into this particular folder or registry or hub or whatever you might be using. How do I release this so that the rest of the company can actually deploy it into production? So that's the whole application release automation. So application release automation went about trying to connect all these stages of, hey, CI, then unit testing, and then I did some versioning. I want to deploy it to dev. I want to deploy it to test, run some stress tests, whatever, acceptance tests, and eventually ultimately deploy to production. That's what ARA is. And so the next, continuous delivery, is another confusing word. And what that basically means is a very simple concept, which is if anybody goes to your application repository and says, I'm going to deploy this to production, it should not break. So that means the tip of your code base or master or trunk latest commit is always deployable. It doesn't mean you are deploying. It just means that if somebody says, I want to deploy, how many people here have said some executive wants to do a demo and you're scrambling to get the latest version up and running in an environment? That basically should never happen. It means I should be able to bring it up. I mean, it's a business decision when to deploy. It's not an engineering or an operations decision to decide I want to deploy right now. Because if you are enabling change to business, it's the business who needs to decide I'm ready to actually ship this feature into production. You could use feature flags, you could do all kind of other cool things where you have already deployed and business decides to turn it on. But at the end of the day, it needs to be about continuous delivery. Now, what is continuous deployment? Unfortunately, it's also CD. So I didn't even put an acronym on continuous delivery. I kept it on continuous deployment is CD. Now, this is the holy grail of everything that we are talking about, which is if I can get source code that was changed reliably, repeatably, and predictably into the customer's hand without any human interaction in between, I have achieved the elixir of life. And that's basically what we are really trying to get to, right? So when people say I am a CD vendor, you can't be a CD vendor. CD is a state of being. It's like me saying I'm a Nirvana vendor, not the Nirvana band. I'm talking about Nirvana as in the Hindu mythology Nirvana. So that's basically what it is, right? I mean, that's kind of what it is. So I wanted to just level set everybody on some of these definitions. These are not mine. These are from Wikipedia. So it's a generic definition. So I'm not really trying to influence anything here. So with that being said, my name is Avi Cavale, and you can kind of tweet me at Avinci or avi@shippable.com in case you want to get hold of me. So I'm the co-founder of Shippable. We started Shippable 4 years ago with this singular mission of we have to somehow be able to get to continuous deployment some way. And that was what we were kind of after. So with that being said, the fundamental thing that we're talking about now is every company has become a software company these days. I mean, there's really no question about that. That means we are all in a foot race. That means every company is trying to out-innovate the other company, whether they compete or not compete, or do something in order to be able to get that edge. So what DevOps did was it raised the awareness, the DNA, the culture, whatever you require in your organization in order to be effective in this foot race. I mean, that's basically what everybody is talking about, is like saying, if people are fighting, having a fist fight in your meeting, you're not going to give in this foot race. I mean, that's basically what we are really trying to get to. But what happened is this is creating what I call as islands of automation. And what I mean by that is there is a lot of cooperation. I mean, all these teams are talking to each other. There's all kind of love that's going around everywhere. It's beautiful. But they still operate in silos. Somebody asked this question about how do I connect all these silos and make them actually work, right? So what's happening is these are all the different stages that are kind of going through this workflow of how do I take some piece of software and try to get it to production. Crazy thing is, since everything is silo, every single tool is optimized for that silo. And that basically means if I am an operations person worried about infrastructure, I care about maybe Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Terraform. There are like 15 of those. If I am a person of development, I care about CI and all of that test. Jenkins, Circle CI, Travis, and Shippable, all kinds of stuff are in that workflow. The same thing exists for every single piece. If you want to do networking operations, there are probably 10 tools for networking. So this is where the problem starts, is all of these different teams are automating things in silos. And there is absolute complete automation in that silo, but nothing happens the moment you switch to the next silo because that handoff is by cooperation. And I'll define what cooperation is from at least my perspective and the Webster's perspective, but for now it's cooperation. So if you kind of look at a typical DevOps workflow and all the teams involved, these are all the kind of activities that happen across all these teams. There is security operations that are worried about network, firewall rules, load balancers, edges, including the security patches on your image. Then there is the infrastructure provisioning team who has to wait for the networking to happen, image to get built so that they can provision a test environment. Development is building their app, and then once that app is done unit tested, it has to somehow be deployed to test, which means there is a dependency on the test environment to actually get provisioned before I can do that, which means there's a dependency on my security operations team to get all those pieces in place. So what is happening is there is a network of things that are happening across your organization, and they're all individual events. They might all have pipelines. A simple thing could be build a single app repo. It could be CI, unit test, run through some development, single box testing, eventually get a package and push it to some repository. That entire thing is a pipeline. Now each of these boxes are technically multiple activities sequenced into a pipeline. And that means I need to be able to connect all of these things together. And today, every one of those black arrows, which are all handoffs, are all happening through cultural cooperation, which means I have to call you and tell you that this is what I did. I just deployed the test environment. Hey, what is the key to login? Here is the information. I'll send you an email. Or there's some chat thing. There's all this communication that's happening, which means you can't get scale because you're dependent on those inefficiencies in between it. Now, some of the companies that have implemented it have realized that's the inefficiency, so they optimize it by building a point-to-point integration between those two tools and say, this tool now can talk to this tool. And that means I've built some engineering code, but it works for a particular scenario. It doesn't work for your entire company. If you want to make it, then you have to enhance it again. So what you have done is you've created another engineering organization to connect all these things together. Eventually, it's going to become the bottleneck. Because if you have 30 people, 30 teams building applications, one team that builds all these connections is not going to be able to scale to their requirements. That becomes the bottleneck. So this is basically what a DevOps workflow for a single application is. Now imagine if you have hundreds of these applications, hundreds of these microservices, that network of diagram is true for each one of those applications. That means now you are in spaghetti world. You have no clue who is calling what. There is no system of record. And eventually, every time I deployed something into Xbox Live production when I was at Microsoft, I had a spreadsheet saying that this is the version that has been deployed to this particular data center. That information cannot be interfaced by anybody in the company unless they culturally cooperate with me, or they like me and I like them. So that's basically when. Otherwise, I won't tell you what I have deployed for whatever reason. So this is basically what's happening. So this is where we are as a DevOps team today. So what we need is a little bit more. I'm not disagreeing with all the culture. It's fantastic. We have raised all the awareness, but we got to get it to the next level where we really need to try to drive. What that means is cultural cooperation alone without connecting all these things together is not possible. You have to make these tools to talk to each other somehow in a more programmatic fashion. Second thing is, if you try to do this ad hoc, the cost, the scale, the time it requires, the training it requires is going to actually negate the ROI that you're actually getting by doing all of this stuff. So you need something a little bit more that you want to think about. Now, finding a bottleneck within a silo is very, very easy because it's all there, it's all, you can look at it. Hey, my CI and unit tests are failing, hence bad code is being pushed to my source code. How do you know why did it take 7 days to get that code deployed to test? You have no clue. Because it might be that my security team didn't give me the latest image and I could not get my infrastructure provision, and hence my code, even though it was unit tested and ready, did not get into my test environment. So that is basically what the problem is. You need end-to-end visibility, auditability, and traceability across your entire organization. So the third thing is, because you don't understand this big overviewing map, what ends up happening is you're making tactical decisions. And you make tactical decisions based on tools, based on the vendors each of these tool vendors are coming and telling you. And then you realize that you have a bunch of overlapping functionality and you really have big gaping gaps in between your entire workflow that you're really trying to get to. And these are kind of the fundamental problems that we hear from anybody who has gone and tried to say, I want to do DevOps, or I'm willing to kind of go in that journey to kind of automate and get to see continuous deployment. So what we really need is, we got to go from cooperation to collaboration. And what I mean by that is cooperation, if you kind of Google it, the word cooperation versus collaboration, it's very simple. Cooperation means you are helping another person achieve their goal. That's what it means by I'm going to cooperate with you. Collaboration means we both are going to work together in order to achieve a common goal. And that means my activity and your activity are kind of linked together somehow so that we both have to succeed in order for my activity to succeed. I mean, that's where we're really trying to get to. So what that means is you have to integrate all your resources, all your tools, all your activities into some form of continuous connected interface, which is very simple, which is what an assembly line in a factory is. All these tools are getting manufactured in all these different places. Eventually they come together and it gets assembled, quality tested, and eventually gets shipped out of the door. That is the whole concept of an assembly line. And you need to somehow build this in your organization, whether you don't need all of this in day one. You can kind of take an iterative approach saying that I will try to create collaboration between these two teams first, and here is how I'm going to connect all these workflow and raise awareness. So with that, what is an attribute of an assembly line, DevOps assembly lines? It's very simple. All your islands are connected into a workflow, creating tool chain collaboration. You need to somehow get all these tools to talk to each other somehow. Not people, tools. People can still like each other and have fun. That's totally fine. But your tools also have to do the collaboration along with you. Second, you should not be spending engineering resources to create all these connections. You should not be having to hire a bunch of engineers to say, make my Jenkins server talk to my Terraform server and then talk to my CloudFormation in Amazon. And I am sitting down and looking at it as, my business is to build an application that ships maybe shoes to somebody. And why am I doing all these things from my side? I mean, that's basically what you really need. You need a declarative way to actually connect all these things together. And if you kind of look at it, what is imperative means a list of instructions that tell you how to accomplish a task. Declarative means a list of English-like instructions that tell you what to achieve. You want to say something like this. I'll show you the script of it. Let me just not get there. I'll show you the script of it. And then the third thing you want is complete logistics. You want to know everything that's happening across your entire organization, because you want to kind of look at it and say, here is the bottleneck. I am seeing that AMI building or machine image building is what is taking the long pole. Hence, I'm going to try to automate or improve or maybe even make that process a little bit better so that I can actually get there. Now, the moment, let's assume that it's taking 3 days. You drop it down to half a day. Now, the 2-day thing that was taking too much time becomes the long pole. So you can go into that focus. Continuous improvement. Kaizen is what you're really trying to get to. You're looking at your entire organization, constantly monitoring what's happening and optimizing at each level. The fourth thing you need is, it needs to work with everything that you have today. It's not like a lot of tool vendors come and tell you, throw out everything that you have done, start again, because this is the new world. What it needs is, you need a platform. The assembly line system needs to work with everything that you have done today. Support legacy, bimodal IT, whatever you might want to think about. And also be flexible enough that it will pave the way for the future, so that you don't have buyer's remorse. You don't want to make, a lot of people we talk to, they're scared of making a decision because today it's Docker, tomorrow it's Lambda functions. Day after tomorrow, I don't know what it is. It's maybe space functions. I don't know what it is. So it's better off for me to keep running my business because it's working before I commit to anything. I want to see some equilibrium that happens in the system. It's never going to happen, which means you're going to get left behind. So you have to have a platform that evolves as you evolve as a business. The next thing is, what is the facets of assembly lines? So this is kind of like a cube. We call it DevOps cube. This is just a mental map of looking at what all do you need if you want to be the Facebook, the Amazon, the Netflix, the Googles of the world. And what that is if you kind of look at this picture, automation is the top face of the cube, integrations is the bottom face of the cube. And you have 4 pillars or 4 sides of the cube that support it, which is runtime, workflow, visibility, and operations. What they mean is basically this. In automation, you're doing continuous deployment at the top level. You're trying to get to application release automation. Below that is CI, and below that is infrastructure provisioning. What you're really trying to get to is, infrastructure is automated, coding is automated, release management is automated, eventually deployment is automated, and that's what you're really trying to get to. For that, you need a bunch of integrations below. Whatever the tools might be, it doesn't really matter. All of that needs to get supported for those activities. And the key thing for this is, you need to have a job runtime engine that can run any of these jobs. You need to have a workflow system that allows you to connect all these things together, including a declarative language. You need to have visibility, reports. Let's start with reports first. I want to know where problems are. I talk about analytics beyond that. And if you want to take it to the really next level of analytics, you can even get machine learning into this workflow. But for now, let's start with reports and audit. If you're Sarbanes-Oxley, you get everything about what happened, when, who did it, why they did it, and what was the result of it. All of this without talking to a single human is what you need to be able to achieve. And then, of course, from an operation perspective, the most important thing that you need is one-click rollback. If you have deployed something into production, you see telemetry that number of errors per minute has gone up by 50x. It means whatever you deployed is not working. So you got to roll back. A simple thing at Shippable, if you want to kind of say, pick a random date, let's say August 15th of 2015. I can bring Shippable to that state because we have versioned all of our code base. You can go to that within less than 30 seconds. Every organization needs to be able to do that for every single application that they have, and that's basically what this is really trying to say. So any tool you pick, you need to start checking off these things. Do they all give you these pieces, or are they giving you one of these pieces out there? And this is kind of like, I call it like a systematic roadmap to achieve DevOps nirvana. It's basically what we're really trying to get to. So, what does a declarative assembly line look like? So it's very, very simple. If you read this, there should be no challenge in understanding what this is. There is inputs, there is some equation, some operations, which eventually lead to some outputs. Now that means one input can be an input to another particular operation that you want, so they all get connected into this workflow. So on the right hand side is all resources, on the left hand side is operations on those resources. And this should not take more than half a day for anybody in your organization to learn how this thing actually works. And they can play with it and they can model it. I mean, your whole assembly line needs to be configured in this simplistic fashion is what we are really trying to achieve to. And it needs to be less of this. And this is what is imperative. So declarative is all about English. This is about stuff that I still am trying to understand after 18 years of software development, right? I mean, that's basically what we're really trying to get to. So it's all CLI, API tools, a bunch of stuff that you gotta do, environment variables, all the stuff that you gotta do, which means it's super fragile. You change one thing, this will break. And you need the person who wrote this to come and help you debug it. Otherwise, that person, there's nobody in the company who can figure it out. We had a story where super large enterprise company, Fortune 10, their main IT DevOps kind of a person left. And they deleted his account because the Active Directory, they deleted it. Every single automation broke in the entire company. They didn't even know where to go fix it. This random stuff is breaking. You know what they did? They hired him back, re-enabled the account for 30 days so that he could go fix it all in the world, and then they let him go again. And he was, by the way, paid 1 year extra money to come back for that 1 month. Because their entire system was broken, and it's all because of this. It's because there is no abstraction. It's all embedded into the whole imperative code, and you're completely stuck. And this is basically what we're really trying to avoid. Now, if you kind of put it all together, your dashboards should look something like that. So there are 3 different pieces here. The top one is what I call the end-to-end assembly line view. Every single YAML block that you saw there is represented as a green, red, yellow, blue block, depending on what the status of that particular job is. Every single resource is represented as this light olive green kind of block. So now I can actually look at my entire organization and see what is happening from one place to another place. And if anything breaks, every day morning, all I do is I wake up and I look at it. I have teams in 3 different time zones, Belarus, India, and US. We have over 130 microservices. They're all getting deployed across the end to the system. I can tell in exactly 30 seconds which team is struggling today. And that's basically what I do as a CEO of the company, is just I need to give them help. I need to know what's happening. If that's breaking on an ongoing basis, I need to have a discussion. We can have some cultural cooperation and collaboration there, but until then it needs to be tool collaboration for me. I don't want to even talk to people. So, because they don't want to hear from me. That's the main problem. It's not that I don't want to talk. Every time I ping anybody, they think they're getting fired for some reason. Maybe it says something about me. I don't know. But that being said, there's audits, every single history. Like that's an entire build history of how many times have I failed, how many times have I succeeded. And for a practitioner level, I need to know what is breaking. I can go into logs and look at exactly what is happening. I mean, that's basically a single platform, a single assembly line, and Jiroka is with automation with a human touch. It goes red, you figure out whether you want to do something about it. If it's green, let's not worry about it. I mean, that's basically how I kind of think. And at Microsoft, we use this thing called critical chain program management, which is all about this. We stopped doing scrums because of one simple reason. You have all these people coming and sitting and saying, no status change. I mean, yeah, I'm working on this, I'm going to work on this, or I'm going to finish this. I mean, that's all they're saying. What we said is, we're only going to talk to people who are on the critical chain path. That means if you estimated 6 days and it's taking 8 days, you've come on critical chain. So we need to have a discussion with you. But if you get it done in 5 days, nobody ever comes and talks to you. So that means if you don't want to talk to me, the best way to do is don't get on the critical chain. And you don't need to be talking to me at all. So our scrum size went massively down. Meetings started becoming much more effective. Shipping Xbox Live Connect was only way we achieved it was because of this, because we stopped having all these meetings, which was just giving you status. I mean, we only worried about critical chain across the system. So, with that being said, the utopia of DevOps is very, very simple. everybody is trying to get to this automation assembly line across your entire organization. If you can get there, you are going to be able to compete with the big boys of the club. And trust me on it, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix, you name the company which is modern, they all already have this. And that's the reason why, even if you innovate and put a feature out there, which is so cool, in 2 weeks, they are going to implement it and you're done, because that just because your whole product can become a feature for these big guys in a matter of days. And that's what Snapchat is starting to figure out now. Every time they put a feature out, Facebook Messenger has it within 2 weeks. And you're pretty much, you cannot ever innovate unless you have this automation system that is built in, and you have to be able to win your foot race. And that's basically what I'm trying to say. That was my talk. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Avi. That was very enlightening. I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of declarative interfaces. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But some questions. We have one on the back here.
So you said that the application has to be shippable, like at any given time. Isn't it true that with auto rollback, like that it should you should be able to ship but have the quality check on the receiving side?
Do you want to repeat the question, or I can repeat the question.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think the question, if I understand this correctly, is if I have auto rollback, I should be able to deploy and then test. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, or have like a quality check on the receiving end, so that even if it breaks, that it doesn't just leave the person broken.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with, there needs to be enough checks and balances across the entire system. But there are certain things that only appear at scale. And we see this all the time. And no matter how much you actually test, you will only see certain things which happen at scale. And especially exponential backouts that are happening, because when you start looking, this happens to us at Shippable all the time. 10 o'clock in the morning on PST is where we see 10x traffic. And unless you can deploy, and this is somebody, how many people have heard of Heroku here? Early on, I was very lucky. The founder of Heroku gave me this thing. He said, what time do you guys deploy? And I said, at 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, why? He said, because the traffic is the lowest, and that's when I can actually deploy. And he said, that is actually really, really stupid. Because if you really think about it, right? Let us say I have 100 users today because I'm a startup, okay? And at 2 o'clock, I have only 7 users on my platform. And that's why I'm deploying at 2 o'clock. Trust me, if your startup is going to grow, at 2 o'clock in 3 months, you will have 100 users. So that means if you can't deploy to 100 users today, you're going to hit that in 3 months anyhow. So why are you not deploying at the peak of your system? Because that will set the tone in such a way that you're always prepared for the peak. And it's not like where you're finding this idle time somewhere in the night and try to deploy there.
They can't, because they don't know how to roll back.
Exactly. And that's the issue. So the confidence, the moment you say that is my mandate, then the systems that you require in order to achieve that will start falling into place. Then you need to figure out how to get there. And that's basically what we're really trying to get to. So it's not about, I don't want to have any checks after I deploy, but I'm just saying you should not be relying on that as the only way for you to decide whether to deploy or not deploy. That's the point I was trying to make.
I'm saying if it hurts, do it more.
Exactly. If it hurts, do it. How many people here go to the gym? If it doesn't hurt in the gym, then what are you doing in the gym? So I think that's basically what you're really trying to get to, right?
Has everyone heard the term nuke and pave in relationship to data centers and technology?
Yes.
So with this systems approach, you can't have anything within that chain that requires person interaction and is a stopping point. And as soon as you've got past that and you have the ability to roll back, actually the danger of having something go wrong is far less significant, because you can just repave end to end of that thing. So nuke and pave is a common goal in these kind of automation deployments.
Yeah, if we have an issue in one of our machines, we don't even try to debug it. All we do is we isolate that machine, get a new machine in there, and push code into it, and we're done. because the goal here is to recover faster as opposed to sit and try to figure. Now that isolated machine is available to my developers, I'm just going to give them access and say, go hack at it the way you want it, because it's not part of my production fleet anymore. So the fact that I can isolate it, that means you need to have network automation. That means you need to be able to change load balancer rules dynamically without you having to go and fiddle with a whole bunch of configuration. Because trust me on it, no matter how much you create cultural collaboration or cooperation, it doesn't even matter. You can call it collaboration for your sake at this point, or your sanity at this point, because I introduced this cooperation word. Let's call it cultural collaboration. No matter how much you do, at some point it's still done by a human. That means it is error prone. So you got to try to get to some sort of an automation at some point of time. And I totally agree, saying that automation doesn't mean people are going to lose their jobs. It just means that they can work on more interesting things. That's all it means. Sorry.
Question.
Do you advocate, flash cut deployments where you just go from 0 to hero, or shadow RAM?
So the question is, do we actually do throttle deployments? I think that's basically what you're asking for. If you are really mature in achieving your DevOps utopia, you can get to feature branching. But without that level of first getting to try to get there and being able to roll back, feature branching becomes a pipe dream. Because what ends up happening is there's too much stuff in the code that needs to fork, because you need to decide whether this particular person is on this version or not. And that's basically where you need throttle deployment. And as I said, Amazon and Facebook and all these guys, they already have all of this. So they are able to come in and say, I'm going to deploy a new, like if you go and ask somebody, what version of Amazon web version or www.amazon.com, what version of the code base is running, they can't answer this question. Because there is probably 50 or 100 different versions of Amazon website that is running at this point of time. You won't even know. In your account profile, it actually tells which version you are on, and it always will get routed to those servers, because that's the version that's actually getting deployed. That's what is throttle deployment. I absolutely believe you have to get to throttle deployment, but it's a giant leap to get there if you are not already there with complete assembly lines. Once you get there, it's very easy to get to that next stage. I mean, that's what, totally honest with you, at Shippable, we don't have throttle deployment yet. What we have is user group level deployment, where we have machines that are called beta. So that means if you are in a beta user group, it just gets routed to a completely different set of infrastructure. So we are doing it through load balancers is how we are doing it. The ideal way is all your load balancers should hit all your application servers, and the applications should decide whether I should serve something for you or not if you have done throttle deployment. We are not there yet, and we have full end-to-end.
Even if you're shipping it at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, you're not shipping it to everybody at 1 p.m. in the afternoon.
We are not releasing it to everybody at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. What we are then doing is, most of the times what we have is a whole bunch of our very, very likable, lovable customers have volunteered to be on this beta user group. So they will all get the change right away. And what we tell them is, and the way we usually get people to get on that train is, we tell them the release features actually will happen maybe when the business decides in 2 weeks that everybody is going to get it. So they want the features right now, so they all will try to get onto the beta group, and that's how we kind of do it.
But the point is, you have to assess the maturity of your culture and your system to determine how you're going to roll stuff out still. Whether midnight's the right time, or 1 in the afternoon, or whether you're going to do an A/B switch or you do a beta group, you still have, and that's going to be an evolving thing.
Absolutely, and I also believe that is based on your comfort level. It's really not about, is the system ready to do it? It's more of like saying, are you comfortable doing this? Like, it's the same thing, right? Continuous deployment is sometimes a black box for a lot of people. They don't want to do it. They want to say, I want that ability to click that button. Totally okay with me. But you will see some applications where you have high confidence, where you don't want to worry about clicking that button. Maybe there are only 3 critical components where you want to be able to click that button. The rest 10 can go straight away. I mean, that's basically, it's just a maturity of comfort level. But again, if you empower your business user to be able to click that button, then you have kind of reached wherever you want to be. At that point, it's all about timing. So.
It's a colleague of mine, whenever I say nuke and pave, he always just drops in pave and nuke.
Yeah,
stepping
I mean-
stones along the way that you can make, like, you've had things like A/B testing or the green deployments, you roll side by sides, you can route 10% of traffic over. That's basically what F5's doing for half of the world. We then just take segments of traffic, and if it's all good, we just lift off the floodgate, and then we nuke. So pave and nuke doesn't sound as cool, but it's a good stepping stone to getting to this evolution.
I think that's the critical thing. I mean, it's all about your comfort. I mean, you don't want to create a crazy firefight right now by doing this. You got to go in a more sequential fashion. But at the same point in time, it's not enough if you're just relying on people to do this stuff. There needs to be some tool collaboration that needs to be happening. And the biggest challenge where people are facing today is it's too damn expensive to create that tool collaboration, because you have to custom do all of that stuff. And what we are really saying is the really next generation of where everybody is going to go is the DevOps platforms need to start going towards assembly lines. And they have to say, yes, we have done localized automation. We have done siloed automation. Now let's talk about creating all of that. Now, when you get there, I can also tell you what's the next evolution after that, which is basically the Toyota Production System, which is continuous improvement. Now what you have done is you've gotten all your highways going through end to end. Now you got to start monitoring what exactly is happening and start going and tweaking each one of these things, which is basically Kaizen culture. And that's the next stage. But you can't do Kaizen culture unless you have this data and telemetry and logistics into your system.
Cool. I think we lost our timekeeper. But
Okay.
that's your.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just 1 minute over.
You got that back from before.
So-
I gave him one of my minutes.
Okay, so thank you very much, and I'm around, and you can email me at avi@shippable.com, and I'm happy to answer any of these questions or anything extra. We're going to be announcing a bunch of stuff. There's a white paper that is going to come out tomorrow morning. Please do try to download it and read it, because it has a lot of information that I just talked about today. So it can, I mean, it's one thing I promise, it's completely technology agnostic. It's more of just philosophy where we really need to go, and we call it the power of DevOps assembly lines. I mean, that's basically what the title is. So just look out at our website tomorrow and you can actually download it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Avi. That was great.